Welcome everyone to our next installation of the GMP Hot Seat. I'm very happy to introduce our next special guest, Michael De La Torre, who is the CEO of Redica Systems. Michael, welcome to the GMP Hot Seat.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Really excited to have a great conversation.
Yeah, me too. We've been talking for years, I guess. I forget when I first met you. It must have been, boy, at least 7 or 8 years ago.
7 or 8 years ago, I mean, you've been our famous demo example when we demo our system and capabilities. We always use, or we used to always use you as our demonstrate the power of our inspector profiles and our data, because you'd been to done so many very impactful inspections and wrote those impactful 483s and warning letters, and so you were just a great example to show kind of the power and richness of our data. And so I initially reached out to you and I said, hey, you're famous, and kind of had that great conversation about your background and profile. So yeah, we've been in touch for a long time.
Yeah, I remember when like the earlier versions of your software, you used to have like it was almost like a rating, like an inspector rating system,
Yeah.
and you could kind of check in and see where you were fitting in as far as I was probably weighting different aspects of your inspections and how
Yeah.
many 43s you issued and
How
things
thorough
like
you
that.
are, how difficult you are, the different things that get cited, how unique you are, et cetera. And, you always kind of stuck out. So that was why you were the one easy. So demo, and then also, the book that we sort of mentioned you. So in any case, that's good.
All right. Well, thanks for that. And so, Michael, could you tell us a little bit more, a little bit about your background to becoming the CEO now of Redica? And how did you end up in this business of regulatory intelligence?
Yeah, it was a little bit serendipitous. I'd had a kind of a broad career, working consulting, private equity, mostly other industries, energy, heavy manufacturing. And then I sort of found and loved software business, but I was always an analyst. And I started my career, like I said, as a consultant. I was an analyst. I was a data analyst, finding answers for clients from very, very complicated data sets with complicated questions that they couldn't find answers to. And so this kind of whole space came like very natural to me. So I ended up finding a guy who'd started a little business that sold 483s and inspector profiles online, a little business called FDA Zilla.
Yep.
And then I bought that from those guys and then founded.
Oh, okay.
So, so that's what it was. They were looking for, figured out how to do Freedom of Information Act requests to the FDA, some other things, and kind of unlocked a need in the industry. They were looking for a partner to kind of take it to the next level. Like I said, ended up buying the business off them and raising a couple rounds of capital to build a real robust technology platform as opposed to just kind of like a data aggregator. And yeah, that's how I found my way here. So I had a real extensive background in software analytics, mostly from other industries, but I've kind of globbed onto this industry, and I love it. People here are great. The problems we solve are amazing. The impact we have on patients' lives is great. So I don't have any of the dissonance from other industries, like maybe like the energy industry. It's like, yeah, we all need energy, but maybe we're destroying the environment. So a lot of those things aren't necessarily present here, right? And then
Mm.
people are great. So I found a new home, and I love it.
Huh. So it is a unique business because of the highly regulated nature of
It
our
is.
business. And
Yeah,
there,
yeah, it's totally different from any other industry in the world. And people, what's interesting about this, Peter, and I've said this a lot, and maybe
yeah.
we've said it before, is like there's so few people in FDA regulated industries that have done any other industry. It's very uncommon
Oh, interesting.
to have done like manufacturing or to done aerospace or to done, finance or to done energy, any of these other industries. People in life sciences tend to have been in life sciences their whole career. And so they see things through a certain life science lens. And then people outside have no idea what goes on within life sciences. Like, oh, I'm in life sciences. Like, oh, you do hospitals? It's like, no, right? So like people don't even know what we do. But then in a similar fashion, people within the life sciences, manufacturing industry, CMOs, et cetera, don't have a great view of what happens outside of the industry. And I think that's one of the unique things that I've tried to bring to the table and to our customers and my friendships and partnerships, et cetera, is a little bit of a different perspective to the industry. Although I have tried to kind of glob on to the way, like I said, of the way we do things around here. But it is fascinating. I mean, one of the most important things that I find, especially with pharma, is quality is not inherent in the product. You can't like pick up the product and say, "Oh, this is a good pill,"
Mm-hmm.
or and in some cases you don't even have a choice, right? It's an IV bag administered by a caregiver, and like you have no idea if that's sterile. You have no idea if the drug's actually in there. You have no idea if it's going to be subpotent, super potent, have impurities. Like you have just no idea, and it bypasses all of the body's natural defenses, and it goes right in there. So you find out if it worked after it's already in you. So the statement of humans are the final testing lab, right? And the other thing is like all the science we have, we don't really know what works and what doesn't work when we're doing the clinical trials, right? You have an
Mm.
idea of the efficacy, the profile and the safety profile, and you do all this work, but then we don't really know, and so we have to give it to humans and kind of watch them. And
Yeah.
I just find that fascinating. And then other industries don't really get that of why so much regulation is needed and why the quality departments are so big and why post-market monitoring is critical, and all of these things just don't really exist in other industries, and I find it fascinating.
Yeah, because you bring up an interesting point. There are other regulated industries. I mean, I think of automotive, right? They have to meet certain standards for safety, right? But it's more of a functional test, and as long as it meets these functional tests, you can market that product in the US. But in life sciences is a little bit different, right? Because there are unanticipated, a lot more, I should say, unanticipated risks that depend on like the actual process of manufacturing that
Yeah,
can't be detected. Like if I turn the steering wheel, it has to turn, right? But
yeah.
that's pretty much just a functional
Quality is not
mechanical process.
quality is not nearly as apparent in the product, number one. And
Yeah.
two, the human organism is such a complex biological entity. Sometimes we just don't know, right? We
Yeah.
give one thing and it works in one patient, and then you give them this, and they're taking two other medicines, or they've had some other condition, then it has an effect that you just didn't anticipate. So I just
Yeah.
think the combination of those things are just incredible, and then also just the complexity of manufacturing, like the chemical and science that goes into like all these steps. These the antibodies or genetically modifying CHO cells. I mean, the science is absolutely incredible in this industry. So, like I said, I just find it absolutely fascinating. I kind of stumbled into it, but I love it, and I'm here to stay.
Oh, that's great. That's excellent. How have you seen specifically the regulatory intelligence field or the science behind it? How has that changed? Flash forward from like late 2010s to today. What has
Yeah.
changed?
Well, I think a lot has changed in the expectations of what can be done, but not that much has really changed in what people have actually accomplished doing with respect to like regulatory science and quality risk decision making. I mean, there's just this huge trend of still upgrading systems of record, right? Moving to the cloud, consolidating systems of record, simplifying processes. I mean, I think we've seen this with, Viva and TrackWise, Master
Yeah.
Control, big QMSs. I mean, that's all still happening, right? I mean,
Mm.
there's still, large, global pharma with 6 different versions of SAP and multiple different QMSs and, non-harmonized systems. I mean, that's still sort of like the foundation of the QMS space and the systems of record space is still very much in a decades long upgrade cycle. So that was present when I got here, and it's still present. I mean, you'll hear it from, hey, we just got this done, to, hey, we've moved over our doc system, but now we're doing deviations and audits and supplier management next, and then next will be limbs, and so we're still in a multi-decades long upgrade cycle for there. So lots changed, but not that. On the data side, right, the foundations of data and analytics, we're still very much in a build mode, right? People are still working on data lakes. They're still working on
Hmm.
preparing data for AI and advanced analytics. They found out the hard way that if you don't sort of have really good master data and data linking and enrichment, AI just kind of falls apart like immediately. And so, but what has changed are the expectations of what can be done on, I should be able to do prediction. I mean, look what ChatGPT can do. Why can't I predict, my CMO who's going to cause an issue? Or why can't I automatically link this regulation to all of my SOPs, right? So the expectations because of what's out there for sort of consumer grade technology, but then into the reality of the dirtiness of enterprise data, it's not there. And so what I'm seeing is like a lot of pilots and a lot of like sort of hyper specific use cases. So for example, like smart writing with like say deviations. Like how do we better deviations? How do we do better investigations? Consistency of writing, consistency of format, consistency of quality of the deviation. And it's like, okay, let's solve that problem first. And then we have 50 projects that we want to do, but a lot of those things haven't been done. So a lot's changed. A lot of the expectations have changed. A lot of the basic, IT and cloud infrastructure is getting upgraded still. A lot of the basic, data, warehouse, data lake, data readiness is being done. People are fed up with dashboards, but the new solutions haven't quite shown up ubiquitously. So there's certain companies that are further ahead. There's certain companies that are still behind. And so the biggest change I would say is expectations given, the AI that's out there and the AI that other people have in other industries and what you can do with your own, but it hasn't necessarily come to, everybody's quality and regulatory department yet.
Why are we so slow?
I think we have really, really complicated data. I think we have complicated workflows. I think we have, we were talking about just like why regulations and why quality has to be, why it's so important, right? And why all the steps and process. So I believe that the regulatory framework by and large is right? But I think we have like very, very complicated chemical manufacturing processes, right? Like it's not like you can't just like walk in off the street and go be an operator in a biologics plant. You can't work in a lab, right? These things sort of take time. We have very, very distributed global manufacturing with suppliers that they're all over the place and constantly changing. And I think for a lot of those reasons, it's just complicated data, it's complicated workflows, it's a complicated business with complicated regulations. And so I think for all of those reasons, it's really hard to kind of move fast with these things, right? And I think also like when your systems of record can only be upgraded 3 times a year, that because it has to be validated, right? You can't do right. So where if you're in other industries, you're not limited by some of those structures. So I think there's that just broader underpinning of it's just a really complicated industry with rules that matter that need to be followed, and it's so that's one thing. And also going back to the other point that I made is a lot of the people that work in life sciences has never worked outside of life sciences, and so maybe there's a little in the box thinking with respect to some expectations and what's possible. I'm seeing a lot of that change with a new generation of quality leaders. People who are more IT first and really thinking like, okay, well, I don't want to do it this way because that's going to take 100 people. Can I do it? Can I do the same thing with 5 people? As I'm building my new quality unit, can I do it in a smarter way? And so I'm starting to see a lot of those experimentation, but it is a tough business. You can't just huck our data at, ChatGPT and expect to get a correct answer, right? Because they have to be correct. They have to be repeatable. They have to be extensible across other things. Different people asking the same questions at a different time on the same data, it has to be the same answer. And you don't get that. You don't get that kind of fidelity from AI right now without an enormous amount of work. And so you just put it aside. It's like, I can't use that, right? I have to do my old process because I have to have a certain level of quality. So those are some of the reasons why things are slow. So
interesting. I really like the point that you made there at the end about the, it's not as simple as just dumping this data into ChatGPT and getting a meaningful answer. It will give you an answer. It will always give you an answer, but is it reliable, right?
Yeah, it's often an error, but rarely in doubt, right? Has a very authoritative style, and
Mm,
so looks right. But I mean, and so by the way, I'm a believer in AI. We have gone very much AI first for all of the things that it should do within the company. But if you look at sort of the whole analytics sphere or the whole like getting answers, doing workflows, et cetera, you have different types of questions, different types of answers that needed. Some need fully reliable answers, and some can just be like, all right, good enough, give me a first draft, right? So
hmm
first do that. Then the second thing is what's the appropriate tool to solve the problem? Is it just a direct lookup? Like I don't need AI to tell me that if it's 21 CFR 211 that's human drug GMP. Like I should just have a rule programmed in the system to apply that label of it's FDA, it's human drugs, it's GMP always, right? And why would I ask AI that? Because AI could screw it up because it's an inference engine. It's not a fact engine. It's a guessing engine. And so where there's
mm,
facts, where there's calculations, where there's direct transformations of data, use software, use reference data, use good old fashioned data engineering. If there's a model that needs to be built that needs to like supervised learning to just do it right every time, let's use a model like that. If it's statistics and calculation, let's use a model like that. Like Zillow isn't using AI. It's just right. For example, right?
yeah,
If I
yeah, yeah.
of a house price, like, well, let's just look at all the other house prices. Let's run a basic multivariate regression and present the house price of our best guess based off this multivariate model, right? You don't need AI to do that. And in fact, AI will probably mess it up. So where statistics can do it, where direct lookups can do it, where software programming can do it, where you just can't mess it up, do that. And then we look at AI as kind of the cherry on top. It does a really good job of generating first draft. It does a really good job of summarization. It does a really good job,
Mm,
compiling things and giving you good guesses. So it is very much a kind of a putty duct tape between all these other steps that where you tend to drop and have to have a human. So if you elegantly use AI in the right place, it can really make the workflow take off. If you just rely on it, right, it's not really a load bearing column in that sense. You can't ask it to do too much, or it just sort of falls apart, or it'll
huh.
just start making things up. And so that, and even with the more powerful models, we're still seeing that. So you really
Wow.
have to spoon feed it. You really have to only have it do what it's really good at, and then you can get kind of the results that you're doing. But this is off the back of years of experimentation, and you get any like most senior AI engineers will tell you this.
Yeah.
You'll get some Elon and some of these other guys kind of talking their book and telling you all the stuff that it's going to do, and it might eventually, it probably will. So like I said, I'm very much a believer in AI. We like to be at the leading edge of everything, but we're also realistic about what it can and can't do,
Huh.
especially in GMP regulated
Well,
workflows.
I actually wanted to follow up on that a little bit because you made an interesting comment there about like we deal in facts, right? Because we're in life sciences and just the criticality of the products that we make. So are there a lot of use case? And so you're like, well, in those cases, like Zillow, they're dealing in facts, right? So they might just use a traditional statistical model, right? Um,
Why
are
would you
there a
do
lot of
right?
yeah,
Right? Like,
right?
yeah.
Are there a lot of use cases for us in GMP manufacturing, other
Uh,
than helping draft an
I mean,
SOP or some of the things that you mentioned?
I absolutely think I
Because I
think
think there's a
so.
lot of fear around this. This is why I want to bring this up. Like it's going to replace us, and
mean, I
so.
think I think it'll replace a lot of work that I think it'll replace the right work that it should, and I think it should make a lot of recommendations. I think there's a Janine Skutnik now at Lilly. She said, Chat GPT cannot be your QP, and I thought that was like just a hilariously succinct kind of way to say it. So,
Mm,
Chat GPT will never be the qualified person releasing drug product, right?
mm,
It can't, it should not. Like, that's a very important. Now, can a really, really thoughtful workflow leveraging data, software, AI at the right place, making recommendations, help you with batch release and those types of things? Absolutely, and it should, because the batch release process, let's say, it takes too long, and it
mm,
times misses things, right? So So it's like, how can you go get all the different data sets? And like I said, use a combination of good old fashioned data engineering, software engineering, algorithms, and ML models, supervised learning, unsupervised, and then also, LLMs, and to have this very, very thoughtful workflow with touch points, proof points in there, and then help that QP or batch person do the batch release, make that good decision and do that. So absolutely, it should be used in the process, but it should be, X% of the overall workflow. Not so I'm thinking it's this much of the workflow of the entire workflow. A lot of other people are thinking it's this much of the workflow, and that's where you get it wrong, right? The cherry on top to augment really good, thoughtful software data and ML engineering, and then it could be really, really helpful. But then also always with humans in the loop to sort of verify the work being done and augment. Yeah.
So if you're a young professional and you're thinking about these things, and it's all over, you can't open up, like you can't turn on the TV, for example, and not hear about AI, right? You can't read a newspaper without seeing AI just pretty much plastered on every page. And I think that this is causing some level of anxiety, right, amongst just society in general, but I imagine also in GMP workforce. What would you recommend to folks to thinking about in 5 years from now what our industry will look like? What should we focus on to prepare ourselves for these roles of the future at following the thought process of workflows or that you just described?
It's a really good question. So you had an earlier question just about like what workflows are ready to be, AI, and I did a presentation on this last year at ISPE of just like everything that's going on with how are people using AI in life sciences. I mean, there's a lot going on in manufacturing, right? But the problem with it, manufacturing for us is like it's not, as you said, like with a car, like every molecule is different, right? Every process is slightly different. And some of these processes are like incredibly complicated, and then they're also incredibly proprietary. So you really can't so just the way knowledge is shared, so for example, if you're a bank and you're making a credit risk decision, right? You can basically make an algorithm and a workflow that will solve like 95% of all credit decisions, and you can do that, and and it's basically this credit decision, this credit, and the data, the risk profile, you have Interpol data on bad actors, like there's just a lot of available data to use to do this, and so you can get these kind of more ubiquitous industry-wide solutions. I feel like ours will always be kind of a little more niche in that you can't really leverage what's going on in other industries because we just have different processes and more complicated processes. But all that said, I mean, I think that if you look at the lab, if you look at the shop floor, if you look at training, if you look at finding cracks in vials, through machine vision or creating a digital twin on the line. I mean, all of this has like elements of AI, but also elements of just good engineering, software engineering, data engineering, like sensor engineering. I think on the regulatory and quality side, I mean, I think smart authoring is a huge opportunity, for regulation, for deviations. I think really we'll figure out how to do, really good audit planning, prep, execution, leveraging what I'll say is a AI-enabled workflow. Not because, as I said, like when I say AI, it's AI and all of these other things. It's never just, throw it to the agent and hope for the best, right? I definitely think, we're doing a lot on, regulatory monitoring, supplier CMO monitoring, clinical trial monitoring. So I think that almost every single workflow in GMP, GCP, GLP will be touched by some form or fashion of AI and be, I'll call it transformed, simplified, but always with that human in the loop, just because of the nature of our business.
That was one of the comments that came through in the chat from Paul. I said, so AI and GXP decisions should be workflow driven with humans in the loop.
Absolutely, has to be.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I mean, maybe I'll be one of the dinosaurs in 5 years and feel like pish posh. You don't need those humans anymore. the robots will make the decision. Maybe. I certainly don't. I certainly don't believe that, and I don't want to live in a world where a human doesn't have responsibility for patch release. But who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So your new platform obviously includes quite a few AI
Yes,
solutions within it, right? That took some time to build, I can imagine.
it did.
Okay, I wanted to pause there and see how you
Yeah.
were. What can you give us an example of a challenge that you experienced and what you learned from what I'm trying to do here is give an example of like how could like if I'm not like an IT person or I'm not a data scientist, what is my role in this new world. So by bringing up a challenge, I might want to say, I might want to connect it to this thought like, okay, so here's what we should be thinking about as we move into this world. Do you
Yeah.
have any of those examples?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share a little bit of the challenges that we have overcome and are overcoming, and then some of the challenges I see at customers. I think first and foremost, it all starts with the data. Is the data available? Is the data extracted and prepared and normalized? Is it connected to one another? So, for example, we're working with one customer who uh, doesn't have a unified supplier list. Doesn't exist because
Okay.
all of the suppliers are managed by each individual site.
Okay.
So, hey, I want to look at who's my riskiest supplier, but they have all of these sites, and you can't even get one deduped list of all the suppliers by supplier type, and then where are they getting their material and where are they getting their material. So this giant grid of who's supplying me what where and where do they get their stuff from. Very, very few customers even have that understanding. So like the basis of how that question could be answered is ton of really hardcore data engineering, data unification, and then so in each of, let's say it's 30 sites and they're all say using one supplier, I guarantee you there's at least 30 different versions of that supplier name across those sites, let
Yeah.
alone the systems within that site. So there could be, let's call it 70 different versions of the same supplier name across the sites and across the systems. And so if you give AI that question, even if it could get all of the data in one place, which they don't have, it would completely mess up that answer, right?
Really?
That is, absolutely completely give you 100% the wrong answer and lead you in the wrong direction. And so similar correlate for us is, we deal with regulatory data. There's no common naming standards. There's no common document formatting standards. There's no common ID standards. There's no common document template. So it could be a PDF, it could be an image, it could be a HTML web page, it could be anything, right? It could be a CSV, it could be in any of this stuff. And so we've spent years building a very, very robust data platform, and we call it Catalyst. And so it required, all the tools to capture all of the information, structured, unstructured, normalize it, unify it. So we have Redic ID. So for example, that site problem. So a company like Hospira McPherson, for example, we have over 75 different combinations of name, address, and ID from all of the regulators. So when we're doing an analytics problem and the customer says, "Oh, well, I don't have a unified list of my customers," well, just give it to us. We have millions of aliases of all of these IDs resolved to one unique ID, and we just use our tools to unify that, and so that we can give you a risk profile because we can do that for you because that's what we do every day. Hey, we have unstructured documents. Well, that's what we do all day. I mean, 483s and post-inspection reports and EIRs and different regulations and standards and guidance documents. There's no common standards to any of that. So
No.
how do you and so hey, you publish a guidance here, and then you publish a new version of the guidance. It's on a different web page. It might reference that in the text, but they're not linked. So you can't even get notifications if a new version of a reg or guidance comes out. Some of
Yeah.
the agencies do it and make it nice, but most of them don't. And
Huh.
so we've had to create like this data platform and an object model of all these entities. Peter Baker. your name was spelled 8 different ways by the FDA. You
Yeah,
know,
sometimes it has E in the
you were
middle.
not just
Yeah.
Peter Baker. I promise you, right? You know, just on the footer of 483s, your name came in a bunch of different ways, in different inspection reports, and on the IRs, and your resume, and just everything. If you spoke at a presentation, you know, at an event, your name was recorded all different ways.
Huh.
Sometimes your full middle name, sometimes your middle initial, sometimes without it, sometimes with the appellation of your you know, credentials. You know, in Peter E. Baker, right?
Yeah.
So you have to handle all of that, because, like, do we have all the information about Peter Baker to make our
Yeah.
decision? So you have to get really, really good at, it's called entity recognition and resolution. So resolving entities. Peter Baker is an entity. He's a human.
Yeah.
What's all the stuff that he did? Sites, products, chemicals, inspections, events. They all have the same pattern. And so you have to get really, really good at unifying and linking entities, and that serves the foundation. Then you have to apply common language and terms. So through labeling, most of it's machine learning, not even fancy AI, you know, labeling and rules. And then you have to calculate a bunch of facts. So math of, you know, how many inspections did you do? How many resulted in this? How many resulted in that? Let's do some basic division. Let's do some things. And we have to store all of that. And then you can start getting into, how do you present? How do you find? How do you analyze that data? How do you compare Peter to, you know, somebody like a Justin Boyd or somebody like an Arsen Karapati? And so until you've done all of that work, you can't even do basic, you know, BI analytics, right? Let
Wow.
alone AI and trends and insights. So we spent years building this platform to solve that problem. And so customers have the exact same problem, right? They're like, hey, I want to find my riskiest CMO. The exact same problem that I just described about Peter Baker, you have with all your suppliers, right? And so there you go. So that's the crux, the difficulty of what we built, and the difficulty that all of our clients are doing, and why they tend to just focus on one use case to get it right and something small. Because if you open it up and say, hey, we're going to do all this stuff, then you just get nowhere.
Well, see, this is what I worry about, Michael, because there's a lot of talk. So we have structured data, like think like an EBR or something like that, but we also have a lot of unstructured data, like in our deviations database. Everybody writes differently. Everybody might use a different name for a chromatography skid, for example, out in
They
production.
a different name for it. Yes,
Yeah,
not right. They absolutely are. Yeah, of course.
they absolutely are. So what I worry about is I think people think it's just we're going to take this data that's in, we're extract it from Viva database, feed it into this AI model and get meaningful results out. And what I fear is that people are going to do that without understanding all the basic work that you just described has to be done first in order to get meaningful results out of it.
So let's just go use Viva as an example.
Yeah.
So Viva is built off of. So have you ever done like a CRM, like Salesforce or anything like that? Have you ever
No,
run a
no.
team? Okay. So here's a problem with running a sales team. This is a fun example. So you have a company, let's say something like, I don't know, somebody who's done a lot of acquisitions, like Roche Genentech, right? And you're talking, or Kite with Gilead. And so you're talking to Kite, but it's really Gilead, right? And so you create an account for Kite, but then Gilead's there, and it's the same company, but it looks like two different companies. And then you're talking to two different people with the emails, and you can't even get a report on what's going on at Gilead, right? Because it has all the different subsidiaries and all the different
Yeah.
people with different emails. It's like I can't get a single snapshot of what our account activity is at Gilead. And this is a problem with that's existed in CRMs, and systems of record. Like, what's the drop down list? What are the standards on how we
Yeah.
name? What are the standards on how we label things? How do we write? We use a common language, and just Viva is a very, very amazing, flexible, linked system. But without all those standards, which, I mean, very few to know people are enforcing naming standards across all their different systems. Oh, and even if you enforce it within Viva, guess what SAP is doing, and the finance team, or guess what your suppliers are doing with their naming system. Like, you can't enforce. You might be able to enforce your standards within your own little workflows, but the second you step outside of your QMS, you're back in the wild west of data. Oh, and good luck getting the regulators to harmonize anything. So it's just like, so all external third-party information won't adhere to that standard.
Yeah.
So how do you contextualize information? Your other systems of record won't adhere to those standards. And then even within the QMS itself, there's standards not being adhered to. So it is first and foremost a data problem before before the AI can really take off.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up, Michael, because I think, you know, so if I'm a young professional and I'm thinking about what I focus on the next 5 years, I'm really taking a signal here that understanding how to get data just into a usable format could be a very valuable asset. Like if I had that knowledge, that could be very valuable to my company.
And that, I mean, so for me personally, so you're asking for recommendations on what
Yeah.
for people is like, you really have to be very, very fluent in data cleaning, understanding what a correct answer is, being hypothesis based. Because once again, like in a world of AI, in a world of the authoritative answers that you can't verify always, right?
Yeah.
You have to be very hypothesis based about what I think the answer is, and then verifying what this is. I mean, so I would that is one recommendation. The other
Yeah.
recommendation,
Okay.
you have to become very, very data fluent. You have to understand the types of data that will do better in these workflows versus not. And so then therefore to kind of build that trust and then understanding like what it's going to take to get this project to the next level. So I think people, I think just for our company, for me, the bet we've made is we've made a big bet on a data platform that you can put AI as a cherry on top and power these workflows. So if that's the answer for all of our customers and companies across the industry, I think they have to go through a similar journey that it is, upping your game with respect to sort of data awareness, data engineering techniques, modeling techniques, verification techniques, things like that. I think that that's going to be needed in this AI world, or else you're just gonna, you're going to be a victim of what the AI produces.
Do you have any recommendations for books or short courses or anything like that that comes to mind?
Good question. I painstakingly created this knowledge. I will absolutely think about that. I mean, my answer was I hired a CTO 3 years ago who was doing enterprise AI before enterprise AI was even a word. He worked for the company that invented the term, right? He was the CTO, and I was like, I need somebody that knows how to do this, that can really build, real technology systems and real workflows on complicated data. And so I went and sort of made that bet and redid our platform on that. Now, what would I offer to others for that journey? I would not recommend going through what I had to go through. So I will think about that. I will take that as an action item.
Okay. Yeah. Um, a question I have here is, what makes a good leader?
In today's world,
Yeah. It might be different than before. It might be the same. I don't know.
there's a lot of different answers to this question, but I don't
Yeah.
want to put anybody off. The ones that I definitely resonate with and helping, at Redica, where the companies we're working with that are really moving the ball forward, it's really it's a certain energy that things can be done differently, and they should be done differently, and that yes, we want to leverage new techniques. We don't want to just throw bodies at a problem. They're looking for a new way, so they're very much in the realm of that discovery mode, learning mode, making new friendships potentially outside of their standard sphere. They're looking to collaborate with their industry peers to learn more about best practice benchmarking of how have you done this and that. They're looking to establish standards across different companies, kind of break down some of those barriers that have happened, that have been in place in the past with not necessarily confidential information sharing, but just like best practice sharing. So I definitely see that the best leaders are seeking to identify and implement best practice, seeking to find a new way to do things, and they're very IT and digitally fluent. in addition to having to really be very resilient and rolling with the punches of this changing industry. So so that's a lot. And then probably above all, just still with all of that, keeping in mind that it's the patients first. So there's a lot of good leaders out there that we work with and that I'm personally friends with, but there's a lot that I would say are still kind of locked in the old world. So, but there's a big transition going. That's at least my definition of a good leader.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And kind of following on that a little bit, but what would you say is one valuable lesson you've learned in your professional journey up until today, and that you would not want to share with a young professional who might be listening?
So I go back and I lecture at my university, and I get a chance to sort of give back. I had a lot of people really impact me as I was kind of embarking on my journey out of school into the working world.
What university is?
Texas A&M.
Oh,
Texas A&M University. We didn't play very well in the playoff, but that's okay. So I go back and I always tell them this. It's like, so for a young person, I always say just do the hardest thing. You don't know what you don't know. You don't really know anything, right? Mm-hmm. You're a young kid. You're a whippersnapper, right? Do good work, etc. But work hard. But always pick the hardest thing, because you don't know actually what you're going to like. You don't know what you're going to be good at, and you really need to put your brain under stress. So it's just like anything else. Your brain is a muscle, right? In a broader sense. So if you just go kind of jog around the track and kind of do what everybody else is doing, you're not going to get into shape. You really have to push yourself. You need to have a plan. Training schedules. Like, oh, how am I going to run this marathon? Well, you get a training schedule. You start this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and you're tracking all your progress. Very, very few people put their brain under that kind of intellectual rigor. It's like, hey, I need to read poetry books. I need to get into music. I need to get into whatever you're into, get into it. Like, go run a marathon with whatever you think you're into and go do something hard. And it almost kind of doesn't matter, right? If it's art, go get crazy about it, right? Don't just tinker and do charcoal. Go find somebody that you're inspired by. Go read about their life. Go figure out something to do. If it's music, if it's this. I mean, for me, I got crazy about Spanish in college, and I went and I did 2 study abroads. I took, I double majored, right? I just that I wanted to learn Spanish, and so I just kind of went crazy about it. And it wasn't about getting an A; it was about getting the best score I possibly could on every single thing that I did. And so just so whatever it is, Joe, just get deep, build like a marathon style training plan, and just hold yourself accountable, and treat your brain like you would your body. And so that's what I tell young kids. And so in the AI side, maybe that is my advice, is just find anything and just kind of get after it, and build yourself kind of a marathon training plan and hold yourself accountable to it. And that is the one in defense, that is the one thing where there's no counter, there's no counter to that statement, right? It's just create a plan, make a plan, do a plan, and make it hard is it's pretty ubiquitously useful advice in the world.
It's actually pretty simple advice too. And I think that matters, because anyone can do that.
Yeah, anybody can do it. I mean, whatever you're interested in. But because if you learn something that's really, really hard, it makes it easier to learn something else that's really hard.
I see what you're saying.
It makes it easier to learn this. It's like the law of compounding interest, right? So it's a law of compounding knowledge. So if you compound for 5 years at 5% a year, you're only going to be like 27% better at the end of 5 years. If you compound at 15% a year, you're going to be 200% better than what you started. If you compound at 25% per year, you are 300% better at the end. So just like these little incremental efforts compounded over time just become incredible. So leverage the law of compounding knowledge, leverage the universal law of compounding knowledge, and just make a plan, do a plan, and make it hard. And that's the only thing, because I don't know where AI is going. I don't know where any of this stuff is going, but it's always just like, there is no substitute for just picking something and doing something hard, and teaching yourself to sort of think and be resilient.
Hmm. How do you think Spanish has contributed to where you are
Um,
now?
it's really interesting. So anybody who speaks, so I have a different perspective as because I didn't learn it growing up. So anybody who learned a language like after, not growing up with it, and I think maybe the people that grew up with, like the Swiss. I mean, geez, come on, they all speak like for Indians, right? They all speak multiple languages, and it's just what everybody did. But I
Yeah.
think as an American who learned later, like it was very quite difficult to sort of jam
Yeah.
a new language in my brain, and it literally is a switch that I can just start thinking in Spanish, and I don't have to think in English. And so it feels weird. It makes my brain feel weird. I like it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, and I think also, not only does it, I think it just opened up some new neural pathways because I can feel a different part of my brain working.
Hmm.
Uh, I think also just the knowledge that I learned something really, really hard, and sort of did it. It's like I ran a marathon. Okay, great. Oh, then
Yeah.
I could go swim this event. So even if it's not the same subject, like I know I can do hard things sustained over time, and that's just who I am, right?
Yeah.
So for example, this AI thing came out, the data is like, okay, well, I don't know enough about this. Like, I need to go get smart. I need to do this. I need to become like a maniac on this topic. And that was, before even ChatGPT came out. I kind of came to that conclusion. And like I said, I applied these same principles and just kind of became a maniac because I couldn't know too much about it
Yeah.
uh, too fast. So I went and sort of ran my marathon for that.
And I like that advice. I mean, you oftentimes hear folks say like, well, having a great mentor is important and all these other things. A lot of that advice, however, is oftentimes out of one's control. I like your answer here because it's in my control, right? It's up to me to do those things. Find something, make it hard, and do it. It's all under my control.
And honestly, it kind of doesn't even matter what it is.
Interesting.
Like if you're trying to be or whatever, like there's certain things that could, make you rich. But if you're just
Yeah.
trying, you're just trying to be like a better person and kind of get after it. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what sport you play. It doesn't matter what you learn. Just and then you learn, and knowledge builds on knowledge, and it gives you other opportunities. Like so, just for my journey here, like had I not had all the analytics expertise and business expertise, I wouldn't have even recognized this as an opportunity. I wouldn't have known, I knew how complex manufacturing worked. Well, no, it wasn't, biologic drug product, but it was a complex multi-step, refinery. And I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of the same thing in general. Oh, there's a lot more nuance and it's a lot more complex. Okay, great. I had a basis, and so learning this industry was pretty quick because
Mhm.
you had that. So you never know where knowledge is going to be used. So you just kind of, you know, and so that would be my advice to young people. Just find something hard and do it consistently.
I love that. Michael, is there any important question I haven't asked?
No, I don't think so. I think this is great. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share. I mean, we could, if you wanted to, in further sessions, we could go deeper into specific use cases and the problems of like, let's say, using AI to do X, unstructured documents. We could make a more technical conversation. I've tried to keep this high level, but if
Yeah.
you want to have a little more conversation about some pointed recommendations on how to do things, I would love to do that. I don't think that that's appropriate for this. We could just talk about trends and what the regulators are doing some other time. That's always fun. But
Yeah.
really anything. I mean, I appreciate the great questions. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I really like that, the point that you brought up there about maybe going a little deeper next time, because, what I think I might ask you is, what, like, again, what what specifically technically can I do in the next 5 years to, as a non-IT person, to prepare myself for the roles of the future? And
I would love to go do a little homework on some specific books and recommendations and podcasts
mhm.
and YouTube videos, et cetera, to watch to create like kind of a basic curriculum. If that's the recommendation, I think that would be a fun conversation.
I think so too, because I think a lot, like I said, a lot of folks are experiencing at least some level of anxiety about the future, as
Yeah,
there's so much talk
an
about.
enormous anxiety about the future with all of this. So yeah, I get it. It
Yeah.
makes sense. I'll help in any way I can.
Okay. We'll definitely do that. And
Okay.
Michael, I want to really thank you for taking time to join us today on the GMP Hot Seat, sharing your experiences, on your journey to where you are right now. Um, I use your platform pretty much every day, so appreciate that as well, for regulatory intelligence. Um, yeah, and I just want to thank you again for
Okay.
for helping
Appreciate it.
folks out.
All
Yeah,
right. Cheers. Thank you. And happy to do this again. All right.
yeah,
Take care.
let's do it. Okay.